Good evening, everyone. Tonight I've been asked to facilitate a panel of Queenwood women, experts in their respective fields, to share their stories and insights on artificial intelligence. I'm also here as the mum of 3 kids. My 2 daughters, Isabella and Zara, are students at Queenwood. While the future remains uncertain, it is clear AI will continue to play an increasingly significant role in our daily lives. Since ChatGPT burst onto the scene in November 2022, generative AI has come a long way. In the early days, it was quite common for a couple to write their wedding speech using the technology. Now, AI will write the speech, generate matching video montages, invites, and thank you notes in one click. In 2023, almost half of all job seekers use tools like ChatGPT to write rudimentary cover letters and resumes, inundating employers and recruiters with low-quality applications. This year, generative AI tools can now provide applicants with real-time assistance in live job interviews. Adoption rates of AI have exploded in education. 86% of organisations in this sector already use generative AI, the highest uptake in any industry. 9 in 10 Australian teenagers have already tried generative AI. And the number of students and teachers who say they often use AI for schoolwork has jumped significantly, by 20% in just 1 year. Yet fewer than half of that same group actually understand it, even at a foundational level. AI is advancing rapidly, and many individuals and organisations are leveraging the technology at a remarkable pace. I'm using it at work every day. What used to take an hour to listen back to interviews, transcribe, and time code the parts of the interview for our editors now just takes seconds. I'm now reporting on more AI advances in healthcare. BreastScreen is just one example. It's being deployed as a second pair of eyes to spot cancer on mammograms. And in turn, the technology is helping relieve a shortage in radiologists. While this change may seem daunting, some of us tonight might feel anxious or overwhelmed. For others, it does create a sense of excitement and curiosity. This evening isn't designed to give us definitive answers about the future, but rather start meaningful dialogue so we can embark collectively as members of the Queenwood community on the journey of navigating an uncharted world ahead. To lead on this journey, I would now like to introduce our panel. And our first panel member is Bella Barker. Graduated from Queenwood in 2012. Sorry, it's Baker. I saw you cringe. She's an AI prompt engineer at BRX. Bella combines her experience in art and design with technology to develop new approaches to content creation. Emma Truswell, Queenwood's head prefect in 2004, is now Executive Director of Strategic Priorities at the New South Wales Department of Education. Previous roles have led her to develop AI strategies for governments in Mexico and Stockton, California. Emma's AI work has appeared in the Harvard Business Review and Nine's publishing arm, the Australian Financial Review. Alicia Hewitt was Queenwood's Vice Head Prefect in 2016. She is currently a management consultant at Accenture, helping large Australian organisations use digital and AI technologies. Alicia was President of the Women in Technology Student Society at the University of New South Wales, helping to promote diversity within the technology industry and opportunities for females in STEM. And our final panel member is Melanie Hughes. She's the Curriculum Specialist for Technologies at ACARA, the body in charge of the national curriculum as well as NAPLAN. In this role, Melanie's responsible for developing and designing digital technologies and literacy content at a national level, and that's used to inform and support the curriculum for individual states. Melanie is the mother of Lola and Evie, who graduated from Queenwood in recent years. Please welcome our panellists. Now I'll start with our first question, Bella. Tell me about how you began in your journey to where you are today.
Yeah, well, I'm an ex-Queenwood girl, graduated year 12, 2012. So I started where you girls were all sitting. I had no clue where I wanted to go, but I always had this inkling that I was keen on art and design. That was my direction, but I didn't really have the path or any of the steps to get there. So you, like any good Queenwood girl, you travel the world, pour some beers, work at a pub, even sell Lululemon leggings. But I went to university and I studied visual arts at Sydney College of the Arts, and that gave me this fantastic mediums to play all around, because I majored in jewellery and object design, but I also got to touch screen printing, glass blowing, ceramics, photography, the whole shebang. Naturally, I didn't get a job after that because it was art, and I lived over in London. Did I say that? Maybe it was Canada, but I've had fast feet. Then to commercialise my skills, I went to Billy Blue College of Design, and I got a diploma in graphic design, and that led me into the world of advertising. And at a small agency, you kind of wear so many different hats. You know, there was only 3 of us creatives, and I was expected to do everyone's job. But thank God I did have that job, because it landed me where I am today at this agency called BRX, which they saw my resume and they said, "Oh, this girl's interesting. She's got glass blowing on her resume." What? So they offered an interview and got along really well, and I'm making it up as I go along, because AI is wild out there, and I do all of their copy, their imagery, video, audio, teach the agency how to do what I have figured out 5 minutes ago, and go from there.
That will make sense. And Emma, you work for one of the biggest departments in New South Wales, the Education Department. Tell me how your journey began.
Absolutely. Well, I loved Bella's story about glass blowing being the quirky thing on her CV that helped her get jobs. For me, it was something that also came from my time at Queenwood, which was Latin speaking competitions. And that gives you a bit of a sense of the kind of student that I was at Queenwood. I was academically enthusiastic. I was a debater. I had no interest in technology at all. I wanted to do economics and history, and I wanted to work for government. And I ended up studying economics and law. Decided pretty quickly that I did not want to be a lawyer. Apologies to all the lawyers in the audience. I'm sure there are a few of you tonight. Instead, I went into government and moved to Canberra and worked for a few years at the Prime Minister's Department. Decided to study a little bit more to go deeper on my passion for public policy, and went to the UK, where I met my now husband, who unfortunately for me had just started a PhD. So rather than going back to my very interesting job in Canberra, I had to find something to do while I waited around for him to finish his PhD. And a friend of mine had just started working at a really interesting startup doing data work, and they needed someone who could talk to government. And I said, well, I know nothing about data, but I know how to talk to government. So I then spent the next 5 years advising governments internationally, first on data, but then I increasingly became frustrated just talking to governments about data strategies and about open data without being able to better answer the question, but what is this for? So in 2017, a colleague and I started the world's first consulting firm specialising exclusively in AI advice for governments, and we worked internationally with government. The company still exists, it's called Oxford Insights, and I'm still on the board. But I came home to Australia to have my 2 daughters, and in returning home decided that startup life was way too hard to combine with very young kids, so instead went back into government, where I now work in New South Wales government in a kind of problem-solving role in the New South Wales Department of Education.
Fantastic. And Alicia, yourself, you work at Accenture as a management consultant. How did it all begin for you? How did you get into that field?
Yeah, so I think really similar to the last 2 answers. wasn't expecting to land in management consultancy or specifically now workforce strategy in AI. AI wasn't even really a thing when I finished school, to be honest. So yeah, finished school in 2016. I was really involved in a lot of student council initiatives, a bit of choir, so I've been up on the stage a few times here. And then from there, rolled into a Bachelor of Commerce at UNSW, where I majored in marketing and information systems. And Infosys for me was a bit of a funny thing because I hadn't planned to study that leaving school. It just happened to be the last class that I could take to fill a full semester of courses in my very first year of university. So rocked up like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed into my first ever elective on digital transformation in business. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, this is really interesting, you know, getting to understand technology from a business sense, but also understanding how human behavior is integrated into that. And as I mentioned, you know, that was 2017 and AI was only one small chapter of the textbook for that first year subject. So it's, yeah, really exploded. Did a couple of different internships, one at Westpac in Hong Kong, researching big Asia tech companies, and also at a boutique investment firm here in Sydney, building a global investment services platform. So kind of learnt a bit about coding and the back end and how we build tech platforms. And then I landed at Accenture in my graduate role. I first started off as a general consultant in the big pool of graduates, and you have no idea what you're doing. And then slowly kind of worked my way into landing where I am today, which is our talent and organization consulting practice. And for the first couple years, that was really doing work around how do we help employees enjoy work more? What does their experience look like? What do the processes look like for HR teams and the technology to enable it? But more recently, which is the really exciting stuff, is how can we prepare the workforce for the future, given that AI is going to be so prominent moving forward in everyday lives and work. So that's where I am today.
Thank you for that. Melanie, I'm interested to hear about your background. Tell us about how you landed at Akara.
Well, it's a long story, so I'll give you the brief version. I grew up in country New South Wales on a farm and went to a public school. And when I left school and came to Sydney, I had aspirations to work in advertising and design. So I began my working life as a graphic designer, so similar to Bella. I decided then that advertising wasn't for me, not because I didn't like the creative side of it, but the people that I was working with were not very nice. So I decided to become a teacher instead. And I went and retrained as a teacher, and my specialty was French and linguistics. So I had planned to teach ESL and French, which I did for some years. And at the time that I was teaching, it was really the beginnings of the stages where schools were starting to teach with technology. Computers were beginning to be installed in computer labs. And I was really interested in that. And I ended up moving into educational technology, teaching with technology, how to learn with technology, how to teach with technology, and I've been doing that ever since. I worked for the Association of Independent Schools as an education consultant, supporting teachers in professional learning and teaching and learning with technology for 16 and a half years, and also in the areas of STEM. And I've worked in schools as head of digital innovation, worked at the Academy of Science in Canberra as their technology specialist on their educational team, which was very interesting, and worked at Akara on their Digital Technologies in Focus project, which was the first year that digital technologies was introduced into the Australian curriculum. It was part of a funded project to go around and support teachers and schools to understand why did we need to teach user interface design and user experience design, which is what Alicia has just explained she was learning about at university. So those things were introduced into the curriculum, coding and programming, designing with digital things, robotics, all of those sorts of things. So I was part of a project team that was helping teachers understand what this new thing was and why we all had to teach it from kindergarten. And I went to the Academy of Science in between that, and then the role came up at ACARA again to be the Technologies Curriculum Specialist, which I jumped at. So that's my story.
Fantastic. And this is a general question for the panel. How excited are you about AI? And how do you see it change in our workplaces and in education? Who wants to start off? Bella?
I am the most excited person about AI, maybe because I've got the coolest job in the world, but I'm also the living example that AI has actually changed everything. Jobs are growing because of it. You may think, oh, they're taking them away. Well, trust me, there's a huge demand and AI is only pushing that beast. I want to make the point about AI only amplifies the skills that you have. It is the tool, not the whole shebang. So if you're making an image, for instance, and you've got a photography background, then you're inserting your knowledge about photography, whether it be the camera lens, the camera type, the time of day, the talent. I mean, that brings me back into advertising. We're all pretty artificial when it comes to making an actual real life talent shoot, so may as well use AI to do it anyway. But AI is pretty cool once you get to know it.
To emphasize Bella's great point about AI being a tool that helps you do other things, and where it's better if you're already good at those things because you'll be able to use AI way more competently. The thing that I'm most excited about AI, especially working for government often feels quite under-resourced, and when you're in government, like in many organisations, you're always trying to work out how to most effectively use your time. As an executive in the Department of Education, I feel like one of the most valuable things I can possibly do is do, for instance, what I did yesterday. Yesterday I was in Tamworth visiting a couple of schools out there, hearing from students, teachers, principals, getting their advice on, I mean, usually, to be honest, when you're in the department and you visit schools, they tell you all the things you're doing wrong, but that is really helpful, and it's so important that you be there in person and that you're there to hear it and you say, well, yeah, we could do something about this, we can't do something about that. The more I can use AI to do my PowerPoints, to write emails faster, to do the briefings I have to do for the executive and the minister, the more time I can spend in schools. And when I then think about that at the macro level and think about what it enables people to do, emphasising those human skills and the things at which we will always be better than technology, that's what is most exciting for me, really opening up our time and those opportunities.
I think there's a couple thoughts. So from an education perspective, I actually had the pleasure of listening to a lecturer from Stanford the other day for one of our clients, and he was actually speaking on the future of education specifically. And what I took away from that was that the next 5 years, and I think this applies to most industries, are going to look very grey in terms of how they will be transformed in integrating AI into everyday work and jobs, and in this case, you know, lessons and the student experience. But in 10 years' time, we will look back and think, wow, this is such a better, more hyper-personalised experience. Each individual student has, you know, technology at their hands similar to a Netflix of today, where you've got recommended learning coming up that's really suitable to the gaps that you might have. And it then also allows teachers, as we've referred to, do more of the student-facing activities. So really sitting down and explaining concepts. So I'm sure that will be really exciting for those students. And then in terms of in the classroom as well, activities will shift to also be more teamwork and collaboration. I know when I was at school, it was very much focused on like the individual and doing your own assignment, but getting to, you know, exposed to those, what we like to call real world skills earlier on, will be really enriching. So that's from an education perspective. And then in terms of the workplace, you know, at Accenture, we tend to coach a lot of our clients on AI being the great equalizer. So no longer will you have to do, you know, years and years and years of study or research in a particular area to become an expert. I mean, you can, but basically AI will give everybody a level playing field of knowledge, as long as they know how to use it correctly. responsibly and ethically, of course. And that will mean that more people have opportunities to different types of roles, and that will kind of help with the way that the workforce and roles within organisations will shift as well. So lots of good stuff to look forward to.
And Melanie, what's your perspective?
Well, I'll play the devil's advocate a little bit. I think AI is very exciting. It allows us to do a whole lot of things that we couldn't do before, and as Emma was saying, much more quickly, and as Bella said, in much more creative and exciting ways. And I think one of the most exciting things for me is watching the way that everybody who is working on AI at the moment is sharing their knowledge and expertise, forming little networks, and really needing to leverage off each other, because it is the Wild West. None of us really know what we're doing. We're all making it up as we go along. Even the experts, even the academic experts say they can't keep up with the pace of change. So it's not just people in the public or us, it's everyone. We're all trying to do the same thing at the same time. So I think the exciting thing for me is just seeing everyone coming together, talking about the positives, the challenges, the things to be careful about, so that we can hasten slowly. So get busy, be curious and get into it, but be very careful about how we do that and think critically.
I see you're a lot more cautious than the others. So this question is for you, Alicia. What roles do you think AI is making obsolete or changing in some very surprising ways in your experience?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and definitely at the top of a lot of people's minds. I mean, even watching the video with some of the girls talking about, I'm really worried about what my job will be in the future. What should I study now to make sure that I'll have a job in the future and be employed? And also as well, for those of us who are already employed or in the workforce, what's that going to look like in 10 years' time? But I think, and Bella kind of referred to it a bit early on, the big takeaway is that AI is here to augment our workforce. So not necessarily replace jobs, but it's going to be what we like to refer to as a digital co-worker or colleague. And some of the examples we've already heard tonight in terms of your really manual processes being able to be automated. So a lot of that heavy admin work that will be able to be completed by your AI or your agent that's working alongside you, so that you have more time to do a lot more of the human interacting activities, which I feel like the majority of people really enjoy, which is exciting. So not necessarily taking away jobs, however, things will shift. So the ways in which teams will work within the workforce and within organisations will look a little bit different. What we'll see more of is having interdisciplinary teams. So for example, if you're looking to put together a marketing campaign for your customers, you'll obviously have your awesome marketers in there, but you'll also be calling on your technology team, your research and development team, so on and so forth, to be a lot more collaborative, because people have more capacity and we're looking to create really cohesive approaches, out to markets for customers. It's the same in healthcare with patients. Your teams will kind of work together, and they'll also use kind of remote experts or remote agents as well that are virtual and on hand. So the team dynamics will look really different, which I guess brings me to another surprising way in which the workforce is changing because of AI. And we've started to touch on it, but human skills will be much more in demand. There was actually an article in the AFR yesterday talking about, for AI roles specifically, empathy, leadership, critical thinking are really highly valued skills, as opposed to, your really in-depth technical knowledge. And that's because it's allowing us to deliver more human facing activities. And so, we should continue to do critical thinking and decision making. But I guess overall, AI is not necessarily taking away jobs. It will shift a lot of jobs, definitely, and a lot of jobs have not yet been invented in 10 years' time. But just to focus on continuing to build human skills is really important, and teamwork as well.
Thanks for that. And Melanie, tell us about AI in education. What does the research tell us so far about artificial intelligence in education?
Well, it's really interesting. It's a very fast-moving landscape at the moment, but some of the early research that's currently out there tells us that there is a real concern over AI dependency, and that we may end up having cognitive debt by deferring too much to AI to do the heavy lifting in our day-to-day lives. So one of the things that I'm often talking to audiences about, and the people that I work with, is the idea that we really need to think about exactly what it is that we bring, our knowledge and the skills that we bring to the way that we work with AI, and use it as a tool. Bella gave a great example of that, rather than getting it to do all the hard work for us. Because as Alicia was saying, AI is not going to take our jobs, but people that know how to use AI will. And a little anecdote to go with that is, I was talking to someone from Engineers Australia the other day, and she was saying that in the world of engineering, AI is also infiltrating every aspect of what they do. And she said a really interesting thing has happened, that we can generate these amazing reports now using the AI technology. But what we don't have is enough people who are data analysts who can mine the data and see whether it's any good, whether it's valid, useful, accurate. So that's becoming a new field that the engineers are sort of thinking about how they're going to be addressing that.
So just discerning the information, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So over-reliance or dependency on AI is a big one. The other thing is that there is a lot of work going on with well-being, because we know that a lot of students, a lot of young people, even a lot of adults, are using AI as a bit of a companion. So there is deep concern over thinking that AI is like a person or can be your friend or your companion. There's nobody behind the AI. It's code, it's data and algorithms. There's nobody there. So actually deferring face-to-face relationships and looking after ourselves is a really important thing, and not letting AI be our friend over and above real people. That's another one. The other really bit of interesting research that I read recently was from the Harvard Business Review, written about by an academic called Rose Luckin from the UK. And she was saying that there is the research that Harvard had done talked about the fact that in the workplace, people that are perceived to use AI to do things quickly without the subject matter knowledge behind them are perceived to be lazy and less interesting to employ. And that they did this research on computer programmers and I think business people as well. So using AI was not frowned upon, but the idea that you could get a whole lot of stuff done really quickly and compromise the quality because you actually weren't the expert was a really big deal. So this is a really important thing as well. And the last thing is AI literacy. There's a lot of research out at the moment that would suggest that we need AI literacy. I think that's up on the screen behind me. These are the sorts of things that we mean when we talk about AI literacy. We need to understand ICIP and IP and intellectual property. We need to understand how data works. We need to understand where to apply AI and some of those other things. What else have I got up there? Yeah. Recognising that AI is not like a search engine. It's not the sum of all human knowledge. Actually understanding what AI is and how it works, and knowing that there are limitations. It can be biased. It can give us the wrong kind of answer.
Because people are using it at the moment, like Google.
Absolutely.
To search for things.
And it's not the same thing. I mean, some of the AI, the generative AI tools are definitely attached to search engines, so they can leverage some of that. But the way that the system prompts work in the back end means that the AI is doing particular things, and in some cases, the system prompts tell it to give you information as though it's correct, and it's not correct. So if you actually press the output and say, is this, that's not correct because I actually have the knowledge, it will say, I'm terribly sorry. And I've done lots of tests where the system prompts are designed to do that because it wants to keep you happy. So it says, at all costs, try and give an answer to the person asking the question, or give them an output that they want. So understanding what's actually going on helps you make really informed decisions about rejecting what the AI gives you, or deciding that it's kind of not good enough, or, as Bella would probably be able to tell us more about, how you actually make it better and better, because you can start with something, and then you can work to refine it and make it better.
Okay, thank you for that. Bella, in your transition from art techniques to digital to AI, have you found it empowering or limiting?
I mean, I'll get a hurdle from AI every now and then, but I'm stronger. I think AI is so empowering. My goodness, you are only limited by your own imagination when it comes to AI. I'll give you an example of what a project I'm working on at the moment and how many hats I'm wearing with this project. So I've received a brief from a really big brand, telco brand in Australia, and I need to do a TV ad for it. Okay, I've gotten the brief, and now I'm wearing my copywriter hat and I'm writing the script. Okay, I'm using ChatGPT that is already pre-trained on all of the copy that brand owns. So ready, level up. Then I am putting on my photographer, art director hat, and I'm now generating the images for that storyboard and going to use them in my final execution as well. So I'm deciding where the brand colours come in and what talent and who's in there. So then I need to make that image move, pop on the director's hat, and I'm talking about where the camera is pushing in, or what we see or what we don't see, and how that image then goes from still to video. This is where it becomes weird. I then become an actor. I've got a really vibrant face for AI, really quite expressive, so no Botox for me, but I'll record myself, say the line that I've just written in the script, and that'll capture the tone, that'll capture how it's delivered, the timing, all of the expressions, and I'll use that as an input video, as well as the video I've just made, and then make the final output video. But that doesn't sound like the teenage girl that I've written in this script. Maybe it's a Creamwood girl. So I need to use AI to translate that voice. So I put on my sound engineer hat and I translate it into another voice, maybe my Foley artist pants, and I make some sound effects from a text prompt, and I'm building this video that's sounding, looking, and moving correctly. And I'll even add a bit of DJ sound behind it as well, all to show the client, just for them to say, nah, that's not good enough. So that's me taking something from idea straight to execution, which would have been a impossible task if you had the idea, to keep that idea so pure along 15 different hands along the way. That's how AI empowers me.
Fantastic. Emma, you're a policy advisor for the Department of Education. We often hear that AI is moving faster than the rules designed to control it. If you were designing AI laws for schools or workplaces, where would you start?
Such a great question. I should say here that I am not formally authorised to speak about AI on behalf of the Department of Education, because that's not my job. There are a bunch of people who do that, but I am not one of them. But let me instead say what I am going to be looking for. As I said, I have 2 young daughters, and let me tell you what I'm looking for when I'm going to be thinking about what schools to send them to, especially for secondary school. Thinking about what Melanie has said about the importance of ensuring that kids retain a lot of the kind of friction that is required to make learning work. So my elder daughter is 6 years old. She is currently learning to read. It is an absolute joy to watch her start to decode the world. It is so magical. It is also super frustrating, not only for her, but for me, to sit with yet another super bizarre reader that is about Meg the dog finding Dan in a chest. The whole point of learning is learning doesn't always feel good. A lot of learning feels uncomfortable, and a lot of that friction is where the cognitive leaps come from. So if we have education systems, if we have schools that make a decision to go open slather on AI with the argument of they'll have to use it in the workplace, so let's start now, what we're missing out on is what we just had from Bella's example. So I learnt many things from that, but one of the things I learned is that Bella is clearly brilliant at a lot of different things, and that part of what her company is paying for her to do is to know what she knows about sound, about copywriting, about sound effects, about the voices of teenage girls. I mean, just so many skills there. So what I want a school to do for my kids is I want them to teach the AI literacy that Melanie's been talking about. I want to make sure they do know how to engineer a really good ChatGPT prompt. I will absolutely teach them to use ChatGPT at home. In fact, my 6-year-old calls ChatGPT ChatGP, which I kind of love because it's like this friendly doctor in our house that gives good advice. We recently came back from a trip to Europe, and every kind of boring mum and dad led mission that we took them on to a gallery or a castle or a museum, I would ask ChatGP for a 6-year-old version, and I would tell her, here's all the amazing facts about this particular castle. And she got so into it that she started requesting it. So I absolutely want her to have all of that. But I also want for her and her sister to have periods in their day that are completely separate from technology, where they are going through the struggle of learning, where their dopamine gets a little bit of a break from being constantly stimulated by rapid response and by all of the excitement that comes from an AI system. And that is what makes me most confident that they will be flexible, that they will find ways, a little like Bella has, to bring AI together with their work. And a school that only does one or only does the other would make me very nervous. But as I said, not departmental policy.
Just to expand on that, what would regulation look like? Like if there was one thing that you'd like to regulate, what would it be? Not departmental.
No, but actually there is a good departmental example, and this is something that I know Queenwood led the way on. So Queenwood went phone free. I don't know when it is. Someone in the audience might know, but I know that Queenwood went phone free some time ago, and New South Wales Department of Education schools went phone free about 2 years ago now. Sorry. I'll keep talking so you can keep coughing. It's one of those things that sounds like an enormous imposition, and I'm sure at the school, when it happened, it was a big deal. We have in the department over 2,200 schools, and it was done basically overnight between one term to the next. Suddenly, okay, every school is phone free. So it's actually relatively simple. If we were to say, for example, half of every day must be completely free from any technological tool, that is something that we as the department could do. That would only be for our schools. It wouldn't be for the independent schools or for any other state in Australia or anywhere else in the world. But it's relatively easy to do some aspects of that. What you then need then is and this is where Melanie's work is so important, and indeed Alicia's in terms of getting workplaces ready, you would need teachers who are equally comfortable teaching in both formats. And then you would do what we actually do to schools relatively often, which is to say, here's how it's going to be, whether it's a new curriculum or a new rule on something, you're just going to need to adapt to it.
Okay, thanks very much. And this is a question for the entire panel. How can we prepare Queenwood girls today to thrive alongside AI in the future?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick us off.
Yes, please.
I think from a perspective of currently and using the tools, similar to what Emma just started to talk about, is encouraging the use of AI, obviously in a regulated, measured way throughout the day for homework, but making sure that we're retaining critical thinking skills and really, strong decision-making skills as well. So getting that information that you need from the tool, but then still criticizing and analyzing that output and making it your own. A family friend of mine actually who goes to the University of Newcastle and studies media and communications, her recent assignment, instead of to write an article, which would have been something that she did a year ago, was to ask ChatGPT to write an article and then to really critically analyze any kind of bias coming out from that. What are the themes you're seeing? What are the sources that ChatGPT has used? So those type of exercises skills are going to be really important to helping to really foster further critical thinking and decision-making skills. And then in terms of, because I know this is always a big one, subject selection, university courses, apprenticeships, TAFE, I think the big message is, go out, study what you like, but just make sure and kind of understand what type of transferable skills you're getting from that learning degree or experience. So like I've said before this evening, our human skills. So where am I getting experience as a leader? Where am I getting experience as a team member? How can I collaborate with others? How can I critically think? So if you're getting all of those skills and lessons from whatever you choose to study in school or further study or where you choose to work, you'll be absolutely set for the future, because it's about being agile and flexible in this new way of working. We don't really know what the next 5 or 10 years is going to look like in terms of all workplaces. So as long as you're able to be flexible and you have a strong core competency to support the work that you want to do, very much welcome to go out and live your passion.
That's a great saying, passion. Be passionate about it. Emma, what's your tips for the future?
It's a great question. I was thinking about what is going to make you really, really good at using these tools, and how does that connect with your career? So what I would say is we know from the data that most of you are probably already using ChatGPT. You're probably using it much more than your parents are, ChatGPT or whatever is your large language model of choice. One of the things I would say is get really, really good at knowing what it's good at and what it's not good at. And one of the best ways to do that is to use it in areas where you already have expertise. This is something that Gabby's been talking about. And I would add to that what Bella's been talking about, sorry. And what I would add to that is make sure when you're doing that you are really interrogating it and learning from that. So for example, I use ChatGPT a lot at home to manage my busy life as a working mum with kids, and also to do things like run my family budget. ChatGPT is terrible at my family budget. It keeps forgetting to add things like superannuation and tax and miscalculating things, and that is so useful to me because it means that I know my team should not be using ChatGPT for calculations yet, or that if they do, that they do it in a particular way. And I would also encourage you to encourage your parents to get comfortable with ChatGPT too, because I think it's something that it's great for a family to have understanding of together, to be finding new uses of it together, and also to be helping you out with that. I feel like that is genuinely positive for all of you. I've been helping my mum, who is in her 70s, to use ChatGPT, and she is absolutely loving it. In terms of what to study, it is such an interesting question. I agree with Alicia that you should be thinking about the core skills you are getting. In some ways, I feel like this is a great time because no one can tell you in the same way, well, you'll never use this or you'll never use that, because we don't really know what it is. So university, for example, if you're choosing to go down that pathway, is partly about teaching you to think. So long as it's a degree that you will feel engaged in and that you are going to put your heart and soul into, you will learn to think. And you will learn to form relationships. It is never going to be harmful to be a brilliant person when it comes to creativity and when it comes to people skills. And I also think there are some jobs that we do know are absolutely safe if that's really important to you. So for example, this is obviously my bias given where I work, but if you want to be a special education teacher, I basically promise you, you will have jobs coming out of your ears for the rest of your life. It might not be AI, but that is a growth area. It is going to continue to grow. You are never going to have AI systems replacing special ed teachers in schools. So there are a whole lot of just very human jobs. And if that is your inclination, don't feel like you need to become an AI expert. Just really lean into those things that you love. And if AI can help you be a little bit better at them along the way, then so much the better.
And if I could add to that, in terms of Emma's really great example of if you're not someone who uses AI a lot, to actually use it to do something that you know a lot about. I was talking to my colleague at work who is the languages curriculum specialist at Akara, and she's a Japanese-German language specialist, but she has to do work on I think it's 16 languages or something we have in the curriculum. And she uses AI to help with some of the translation work with some of that, as well as working with the individual teachers that teach those languages. But she was saying that doing some tests about asking AI to have a conversation with her in Japanese or in German was an interesting exercise, because she said it was very good in German. In Japanese it was terrible, because it missed all of the cultural cues and all of the significant things that come with being a speaker of Japanese. And because she was an expert in those two languages, she could really compare and contrast. So she said one was fantastic, one was terrible. And she only knew that because she was able to bring her subject matter knowledge to the table. So it's a really important point. All of the research tells us we need parents to be using it as well, so that they're aware of what's going on and what possible things are going to help their students or harm them. So it is a really important thing that you get out there and use it. In terms of what I'd say to the girls, I would say unconventionally, we learn not only from our teachers and from our parents, but we learn from each other, and we learn in a range of different environments. So I would say one of the best things you could do is talk to lots of people about what they're doing with it, how they're using it. Did they have any problems? What do they find is interesting? What are their questions? In terms of your learning at school, be proud of the things that you like, that you want to learn more about, and push yourself. Do the hard fun, the hard learning. Be uncomfortable, because those things that help us overcome challenges are the sorts of things that we can apply to using new technology like AI. None of us on the panel had the experience of using AI when we were at school. We've all had to learn on the job. And we've been able to do that because the experiences we've had in our own schooling and in our own work lives have meant that we're the sort of people who have, you know, put ourselves in a place where we'll be open to new opportunities and say, well, I don't know how to do that, but I'll have a try and see if it works. So I'd encourage you to be those kind of people. And as Bella said, do the subjects you love, because all of us did. And we're all doing very different things that are all attached to AI in some way or another. And it hasn't done us one bit of harm. In fact, I think the weird and wonderful twists and turns that my career has taken me in have made me better in the job that I'm doing. If I had actually specifically studied a technologies-related thing, I don't think it would have happened the way it did. So all of the experience that I bring to my job makes me better at what I do. And Bella's example about being a creative person in an environment where she can bring all of that expertise in is a great example of that same thing. She didn't plan on being a prompt engineer, but she's a really, really good one because she's got all of this subject matter expertise.
Speaking of Bella, do you have any tips about girls and what they should be doing in terms of being future ready with AI?
Knowledge is power. And power is coughing. No, power is, apologies for that. Power is being curious. You know, I taught myself everything because I was curious. How did that work? What did you do if you press this button? Oh, but I wanted to reiterate that AI is the tool, not the human replacement. So you are constantly in the driver's seat. And we talk about AI holistically, but let's just bring it back to LLMs, large language models. And I'm giving the wink of the let's change over to the slide. My sliding team isn't ready. No, is if I could give you a real life example or something that this is the part where you not yet bring up your phone to take a photo, but hang on, wasting time. When you're prompting, what we're finding is that a lot of people are going bang straight into step 5 at the question point. But if I could bring you back to your AI is your, oh, by the way, take the photo, but don't tell my CEO, right? This is our proprietary. But you all Queen girls, we're all mates here. It's fun. I'm just showing my friend. So We ask it at the question point, but really your AI is your co-pilot, your intern, the person that has no clue what you're doing, but gee, it's got a big brain and it's got a whole lot of information ready to go. So if you want to prompt something, I'll just stand up and have a look. We want to create your prompt. So this is like a mental checklist of all the things that you put within the first entry of your chat. So C stands for your character or your content or your context, sorry. By giving it a role, it understands already what the hell you're going to do. So even by saying you are a copywriter of 20 years experience, understands, okay, I'm going to give you copy and I'm going to give you good copy because it's 20 years experience. But, by giving it the exact request, being really pointed of what you want, because ambiguous request gives you ambiguous results and you're just letting the AI go berserk because it's all based on probability. It will give you exactly what you have prompted in its best way. It's just trying its hardest to please. So be really specific in your request. Elaborate on that request, break it down. How would you communicate that request to your colleague, to anybody that was sitting in the room next to you? We all make mistakes. A is for adjustments. Majority of the time we get back our response and look at it and go, that is not what I'm after, but no problem, there's adjustments. Maybe better to adjust it than to actually give it feedback saying, that's so wrong, but feedback is good for AI. So adjustments can work either re-editing your prompt or by giving it feedback, telling it why it's wrong, and then going into what you actually want. T, type of output, so how you want it to respond. Even just using the words like, oh, do you want it in a bullet point? Do you want it in a table format for readability? Do you want it in a PDF document or a Word document or a PowerPoint? However you want it in the final execution, because how do you expect your intern to give you its response if you don't know how you want it? And then E, extras. This is a little fun flair I like to add because AI, I'll bring you to the story of last year around Christmas time, ChatGPT was getting exhausted. It was mimicking human behavior. And so they found that all the results were getting really quite shitty. And people found that if they started prompting, take a breather before you reply, something that you would give to your friend, it actually responded better. Or people bribed it, said, give you $200 and if you succeed, you get that. And other people, were quite threatening towards AI, but that worked too. Death threats are in. So I don't, because AI is going to take over, but remember its please and thank yous. And remember to create when you prompt.
Thank you so much. That was brilliant. It was so good. Please give it a round of applause. Thank you. So now is the opportunity for you as an audience to ask questions. We have two technology captains, Allegra and Matilda, who will be armed with microphones and ready to pounce. So if you have any questions tonight, now is the time. If there's any parts of tonight with information, we have a couple of minutes. We've only got 2 minutes. So anyone has a question? Yes, we have one at the front here. We have second row, third row.
Hi, you said that, you're talking about ethical and productive uses of AI. What exactly did you mean by an ethical use of AI? Yeah. I think it was Melanie, I think you said it.
Okay, so one of the things is when we're being ethical about AI is a collection of information that's been put together, and when we ask a question, the AI can only answer based on the information that it's got inside the model. So one of the things that we know people are doing is taking something and putting it into the AI and saying, can you summarize this? Or this is the question, or this is the artwork that my teacher has given me. Can you write me a description of what this artwork is about? by putting that artwork or that document or that information into the AI, we're actually breaching copyright. So that's an ethical consideration. The other thing is taking other people's work and putting it into AI because it may become part of the model. So we don't want to be giving away our own work or other people's work. We want to be thinking respectfully and ethically about the way that we do that. The other thing too is something that we may not think about. People from other cultures have information that they don't necessarily want to be part of an AI model either. I'm thinking particularly of First Nations people. One of my colleagues at work was saying to me, you know, it's important that if people have questions about Aboriginal culture, for example, they should talk to an Aboriginal person and not ask AI the question, because AI is not Aboriginal and AI doesn't have the cultural knowledge. So the ethical thing to do if you're wanting to answer questions like that is actually to approach a person that has that knowledge rather than going to AI for it and you know, not respecting that they're the appropriate people. They would be some of the big things, I think, too. And also knowing that AI doesn't necessarily have a not biased system. I mean, we've got a panel of women experts here. The jury is out, but essentially the group think in the world is that most of the AI models are built on information written largely by men, and it doesn't represent women or minorities or diverse people very well. So we need to think about if we take an answer from AI and we don't check it or we don't cross-reference it with other sources, we may not be getting an ethical reply or an ethical answer that we then put into something else and put out into the world.
I'm happy to add to that. This is a little bit of a different lens, but in terms of building AI, there's a really interesting example around how we need to think about not just your user. So I think in, you know, kind of the typical user design, we'll just think about the one person that uses that system or a website or platform or app. But we have to think when we're building and designing AI, the impact of the community and society. So there's an example out there of when we're, you know, they've built autonomous driving cars, and the way that those were designed were to obviously look for people, pedestrians crossing the road, and then also cyclists. But unfortunately, they didn't think about people crossing the road with a bike. And unfortunately, there was accidents when that kind of, you know, that collision happened. So when we're building AI, we don't actually just have to think about the one person using it. It's also thinking about what is the impact to the society and community as well.
Great, thank you. Any more questions? Just at the front here.
When you said AI was like getting like sloppy at Christmas time, what did you mean? How did the answers change around then? Like what made them have human responses? Bella, yeah.
It was desperate for a holiday. You could tell in the quality of output. This was in early stages of AI, so we're talking maybe not exactly 2 years ago, like a year and a bit ago, or whenever Christmas was. What time are we in? And it was ChatGPT giving outputs of whether people were asking for copy or whether people were asking for agendas, and they were just not giving them what they asked for.
Just to add a little bit more about this amazing phenomenon, people wondered, well, what's caused this? And one of the theories, because one of the funny things about large language models is that even the people who build them don't totally understand how they work. And so when they then went back and said, why are the answers worse than usual in mid-December, the engineers who had built it tried to come up with why, and one of their proposals was, well, maybe more than we realised, when ChatGPT is doing its computation, it's taking into account the time of year, and because it's mostly being built on Northern Hemisphere developed country type inputs. For that reason, they when they're looking at things at that time of year, most of us are getting kind of tired, and it might be that our outputs aren't as good. And so they have factored into their model, oh, by the way, if you notice it's the 15th of December, you should answer in a worse way than usual. And one of the ways that people were getting around it was by saying, pretend it's the 1st of February and answer this question for me.